Greetings. This is Ragavi, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Bharat Institute of Higher Education and Research Center. The course offered is Technical English and the topic is Project Writing. Writing is one of the literacy skills. It is also a productive skill that could possibly be a measure or a scale to test one's learning and proficiency. It is the reflection of our thoughts that are reciprocated with words. Project writing is one such activity for which writing is a prerequisite skill. It develops the habit of tenacious longing to pursue your goals to a conclusive end. It helps you to develop a sense of proportionality and mastering of techniques because it gives you the ideology of bringing life to your ideas and receiving a good output from it. It is basically an expression of ideas. Writing can be categorized into two forms, the formal writing and the informal writing. Of course, the project writing is a formal writing. Let us see what are the aspects of writing a project. So, data collection. Data collection is a process of gathering and measuring the information. What is a data collection, first of all? When you decide a project, topic for the project, or maybe topic for writing something, a piece of content, what happens is our brain works wonders. That is, in general, even our brain, what it does is nothing but when a topic rises in our mind, it immediately gives us brainstorming ideas. Our brain stuns with ideas and points. For example, if I ask you to give 2 or 3 lines on communication instantly, obviously you will be able to do it on the spot. Why? Because our brain picks up the points which is related to the asked question and it gives out as the answer. That is similar to this data collection because when you decide what is your topic for the project writing, what we do is we do an extensive research. When you conduct such an extensive research, what it results is abundance of data. Abundant of data which is relevant and also irrelevant to the topic of your project. So what you are supposed to do there is you have to first of all evaluate the gathered data. How can you evaluate it? First of all, you have to segregate which is the relevant data and which are the irrelevant data. How can you do that? When the collected data gives you the relevant and possible answers to the questions asked by you and related to the topic of your project, that will be considered as a relevant data indeed. And other than that, all the other irrelevant or maybe extravagant information can be avoided. That is why the data which we are collecting must be qualitative and not a quantitative one. That is the point which explains the point. Why a data collection should be qualitative. What do you mean by qualitative? Qualitative is nothing but relevant and at the same time which gives the exact answer that you seek in it. This is why you have to evaluate the data which you have gathered so far. What are the types of data collection? There are 5 types of data collection and the first one is observation. As you can see, observation. What do you mean by the word observation? Yes, of course, it has the literal meaning. Observation is nothing but, for instance, if you wanted to do a project which is based on the mechanical department or maybe which is based on constructing or maybe architecture, whichever is your core subject related to that, if you wanted to conduct a project, if you want a project to be working out, what you can do is you can observe the seniors or the person who is in charge of it, maybe a pioneer in that same department itself. So that is what an observation is. You can watch them, you can learn from watching them, and also you can observe their nook and corner. nook and corner in the sense how they are handling the situations, how they are coming up with the ideas, and how they are putting their ideas into implementation. These types of ideas which you can get from is called as an observation, and it is also a type of data collection. You can read, you can watch, you can learn from the person. That is observation. Let us move on to interview. Interview is also similar to observation. Once, when you get to know a person who is related to that particular project, you can move closer to them, you can interact with them, you can ask them tons of questions to them, or maybe the person who is guiding you the project, you can ask the questions to them, and that is the interview which we are speaking about. Next, what is a questionnaire? Questionnaire is nothing but you yourself selecting or maybe gathering the types of questions which is relevant to the topic, and after that, based on that questionnaire, you can collect the data. It may be from library, it may be from archives, or it may be from the internet. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is, these are types of data collection. You can do data collection even by doing all these things. And next comes group discussion. So obviously, a project cannot be done alone. So you'll be having a team, right? So with those team members, what you can do is you can sit together and you can brainstorm your ideas. Brainstorm your ideas in the sense you can split up your ideas, or maybe the part which you are going to discuss there, and you can come up with innovative ideas. You should be ready to accept the points which the other people is giving you, and also you should be ready to give your points to them. That is, you have to explain why you are giving that point to that particular person. So this is a healthy way of collecting a data. It saves time and also it is effective indeed. The last one is documents and the records. This is where libraries and newspapers, magazines, etc., everything comes along. Here, documents and records are reliable until unless you are ready to mention the person or maybe the source from where you are taking that particular idea. That we will be seeing in detail in plagiarism. So after collecting all these data, what we are going to do? Let's see what is the next step. The credibility and authenticity of the data. This is what we are going to discuss next. What do you mean by authenticity? Authenticity is nothing but testing the data whether it is reliable or not. And even credibility gives the same. So analysis of collected data reveals the credibility of it. How much ever data it is, as I told earlier, it should be qualitative, not a quantitative one. Unless until it is a qualitative, you have to make sure that how good they are. How can you make sure that they are good is you have to check how credible the collected data is. The source of the data and the quality of the data proves its reliability. If the data is good in quality, it means that it is a reliable data. How can you identify that it is a quality or a qualitative data is there are sources from where you can gather the information, ideas, project ideas, etc., etc. Unreliable data always is one of the biggest problems that questions the quality of the project. You may have an excellent idea in your mind. Your project may be an what top-notch idea indeed. But what will happen is if you have unreliable data in your project, it will be considered as a biggest maybe a flop or maybe even a theft indeed. So always make sure that the data you are collecting is reliable and also it is authenticated. That is the most important thing. To ensure credibility, one can find their sources on Elton B. Stephens Company, Journal Storage, Directory of Open Access Journals, Google Scholar, and Microsoft Academic Search. Also, expert interviews. These are the few credible sources where you can rely upon. So next topic is plagiarism. What is a plagiarism? Have you ever come across this word plagiarism? But without or with the knowledge or the consent of the person, many of you would have done this in your life. That is like writing assignments in your schools, or maybe writing homeworks in your schools, etc. In those age, you doesn't know that is a plagiarism indeed. That is a mistake. But now, I hope it is time for regretting your faults. So, plagiarism is nothing but presenting someone else's work or ideas as our own, with or without their consent, by incorporating it into your work. That is, when a person comes up with an idea, or maybe even an invention, or even a paragraph written by their own, but you are taking the same exact paragraph and not giving the credit to them, but you mention your name below it, or even if you are giving the idea, taking the idea from them, stealing the idea from them indeed, and giving your name below that, that is called as plagiarism. It is, of course, a great mistake and which never should be done by a learned person. Whom do we call a learned person? Of course, it's you. It is us. We are called as the learned person, learned people. So we are not supposed to do this plagiarism indeed. What are the, how can you avoid this plagiarism then? The first steps, the first 5 steps involved in avoiding the plagiarism is using a direct quote. You sometimes we know that that is a famous quote, or maybe that is the exact wordings of somebody else, but still we will be intended to use the quote there. That you have to avoid. You should never use a direct quote of people somewhere. And if in case it is unavoidable, you are not able to um, come out of that, you are in dire necessity to mention that quote, what you are supposed to do is you have to give credit to them. Next one, paraphrase with care. And some people will be intended to paraphrase whatever they write, even though it is not, it is idea is theirs, but they doesn't have the required sources, and they rely upon all the open sources available. They try to paraphrase it. In that case, what we have to do is we have to try to paraphrase it with care. Means you have to avoid the original text in it. You have to rewrite all the content you are choosing to write. So the next one is give credit where credit's due. Meaning when and where you are taking the credit or the work of the other person, you are supposed to mention their name. That is, this line in this paragraph is being taken from this source. This person has written this. That is called as giving credit to them. In research journals, and in maybe if at all you would have come across theses, you would have seen the pages at the end of it called bibliography. That is nothing but giving credit to the person, or maybe the source or the book from where they have taken the primary sources and secondary sources for their research. That is called as giving credits to them. And beware of cutting and pasting. Some people will be there. They will be very much interested in just going on internet and browsing the topic, and after that they will be very excited to cut, copy and paste. To them, this is what we are insisting. You have to stop doing it. And in case if you are doing cutting and copying and pasting there, you have to be aware of what you are doing there. It is your action and you are responsible to it. The next one is footnote as you prepare a draft. In case, as I told earlier, for the first step itself, it is unavoidable. You are not able to come out of that taking the credit, or maybe you're not able to paraphrase that particular content. What you can do is you can prepare a footnote whenever you are taking somebody else's work, or you are mentioning somebody else's idea. You have to take a footnotes is nothing but you have to mention which line or maybe which paragraph you have mentioned that particular person's idea. You have to take a note all along your project, not just in one page or maybe at the last page. All along your project you have to keep track of where and when you are mentioning somebody else's work. That is very important that you have to do. That is how you can avoid plagiarism. Types of plagiarism. What are the types of plagiarism? Oh, plagiarism also is having a types then. Let us see what it is. Direct plagiarism. Direct plagiarism is exactly what you did in assignments or maybe in homeworks at schools, even the record notebooks, right? We used to give them, they used to give you a what to say, a content, and they used to ask you to draw, and they used to ask you to write the content as they have given. You had to, what is it, like copy pasting, that's it. That is called as direct plagiarism. Until unless it is a record notebook, it doesn't affect you. But if you are going to mention that as your work in some place, maybe as a project or maybe as a research paper somewhere like that, that is a mistake. It's a crime. You are not supposed to do that sort of forgery. Direct plagiarism is nothing but word to word transcription. Exactly copying what the other person has done is called as direct plagiarism. You have to avoid doing that. The next one is self plagiarism. Self plagiarism is something which is very much fun. Actually, fun because it is their own work. We would have done the same work, but still, what we used to do is we used to take the exact work and replace with certain letters or maybe phrases alone and submit the same idea. Maybe let us take it as your senior's project, and he is your best friend, he or she is your best friend, and you are asking the help of them to help with your project, and they are giving their project to you. What some people will do is they think that they are too clever, and they used to do this self plagiarism. That is, they used to steal from there, they used to mix it up with few phrases or maybe few paraphrases, and they used to write the exact project. That is called as self plagiarism. You are not supposed to do that either. The next one is mosaic plagiarism, which is interesting, quite interesting. That is borrowing phrases from a source without using the quotation. That is, they will take whatever is necessary from the internet, but they will not be ready to give the credit to them. That is called as mosaic plagiarism. The last one is accidental plagiarism. Even this is a crime. You're not supposed to do an accidental plagiarism also. This accidental plagiarism occurs when a person neglects to cite their source or unintentionally paraphrases a source by using similar words, group of words, or sentence structure without attribution. That is, with or without their knowledge, it doesn't matter. Maybe intentionally or unintentionally, that also doesn't count. But what matters is they have copied somebody else's work. That is called as accidental plagiarism. Okay, one must never ignore or neglect to cite the other person's work. That is what we have to learn in plagiarism. When you avoid plagiarism in your work, what happens is your work becomes efficient or effective. It becomes an effective writing indeed. It is obviously authenticated. It doesn't need any other evaluation or maybe a set of categories to mention whether you have done a good work or good job, whatever, whatsoever it is. It doesn't require. If your work is plagiarism free, that is the best thing you can take credit for. Fine. So let us see what is next. Compiling the data. Compiling the data is the last stage of writing a project. What is the last stage of writing the project? Before that, what we have to do is you have to draft a project first. Whenever you are getting ideas, whenever you are compiling the ideas, you are evaluating the ideas, what you are supposed to do is you have to write a draft of it. Writing a draft is a good habit. The draft is nothing but when you are supposed to give a report and you are preparing a what is like a preview to whatever content you're going to write, that is called as a draft. So in the last stage of writing a project, what you are doing is you are compiling the collected data and you are going to submit a draft. So it involves the proofreading, drafting, and finalizing the project. So what do you mean by proofreading? Proofreading is nothing but checking for the mistakes, grammatical error, structural error, and even maybe the plagiarism which we were discussing in the previous slide. That also involves in proofreading. Structural error in the sense grammatical mistakes and also sentence formation mistakes, that also should be avoided in data, compiling the data. Fine. And then comes drafting. Drafting we saw earlier. And then finalizing the project. What is the final stage in a project is output, obviously. So even after getting the output, if everything is done, that is a complete project. Yes. So let us see what are the presentation techniques. These are the topics which we are going to see in the further slides. Slide structure, fonts, background, graphs, spelling and grammar, conclusions and questions. So presentation techniques. Let us see what is the first slide. Slide structure, the most important category in learning the presentation techniques. In a slide structure, what you have to remember first is that use 1 to 2 slides per minute of your presentation, which is very important because only then the person, or maybe let us call the listener or the validator who is watching your presentation, will be capable of following what you are going to or what you are trying to explain to them. That's why it is necessary. Write in point form, not in complete sentence. Exactly, which is very necessary. Always, when you prepare a slide, make sure that you are having only the points, not in sentences, because if you write a full sentence in the presentation itself, we tend to read the sentence instead of explaining what we are having in our mind. It will become a barrier to our speaking skill. Hence, we have to avoid having a complete sentence in it. The next one is avoid wordiness. Use keywords and phrases only. Similar to the second point. Here also they are mentioning the same thing. Instead of having difficult or maybe proficient words enough, you can keep it simple with phrases and also keywords. When you look at the keywords, automatically you have to remember what was the point you were about to convey there. This is called as the slide structure. So here what you have to most importantly remember is you have to use 1 or 2 slides per minute. That will help the listener to understand the context of your presentation. So next, what do you mean by 6 by 6 rule? That is 6 lines of text and 6 words per line. That is the limit for a slide. That will make your slide neat and also readable. What is readable then? You know what is understandable, and legible also you would have come across. What is readable? For instance, when I am presenting the same presentation on the classroom, maybe in a projector, using a projector in a smart class, what will be the difficulty if the same slide is containing of maybe 10 lines or 15 lines? What will be the difficulty is, it will be easier for me, I can go very fast enough, but what will be the difficulty as a student to you people will be that you will not be able to follow. That is why you have to limit the lines used in a slide and also how many words you are using per line. That is called as 6 by 6 rule. 6 lines of text and 6 words per line. That is the important thing. And what is the next important idea you have to remember is only one topic per slide. If you choose to explain a topic, you have to have only one slide on it, or maybe in one slide only one topic you have to choose. For instance, if you choose 2 ideas to be shared in one single slide itself, what will be the difficulty is the listener and also sometimes the presenter will get confused. Hence, you are supposed to have only one topic in one slide, as we have here 6 by 6 rule and also the previous slide structure. Let us see what is next. Font style. Font style should be readable. Just now we spoke about readable, right? When a person is capable of understanding what the message is being conveyed in the presentation or in the paper, when you write or maybe when people are validating it, that is called as readable or legible. Both are giving the same meaning, okay? The font style should be readable. Yes, of course it should be readable. So what are the recommended fonts are? There are certain fonts which will be visible or which will be available in all kinds of laptops and maybe PCs, whatever it is. In everything, certain fonts alone will be available. And in modern days, everything technology is improvising, and everywhere you can see that fonts are being They have the capability of enabling the font style variants even in the mobile phones, right? So instead of doing all those decorative things in your slide, what you are supposed to do is you have to have the slide simple, and also it should be readable. How can it be simple is certain fonts like as you can see on the screen, Times New Roman, Arial, Verdana, Veranda, and few more other Calibri. All these fonts alone you can prefer because they are available in common at every PCs and every laptops. It will be easier to understand. It will be readable. That's it. Simple. Keep it simple. So the next one is standardize the font throughout the slide. That is, if you choose the font style as 12 or maybe 16, it should be maintained throughout all the slides. For instance, if my PPT consists of 32 slides, then all the 32 slides should have the same font size. That is what standardize the font throughout the slides. Not just the style size, also the style should be standardized. This presentation is in Times New Roman. It's just an information to you, okay? That will help you. It will be Times New Roman is very quite common that everybody will be happy to read it. It will be good enough to understand also. Next one is font size. So just like how the font style is very important, the font size also matters. That is, it should be in minimum 36 points for title slide and 24 points for the body. Why? Because title obviously it should be visible enough, right? That is why it should be consisting of 36 points. You know how to change the font size and how to select the font style, etc, etc. I don't have to go so deep in it. You people are clever enough. So next it is for the content. That is after the title slide, then comes the content, right? For that content, how much you have to choose is 24 points. That will be the minimum. It will be useful for the maybe the listener or maybe the audience, the spectators, to understand what is being presented in that slide. Fine. Next it is the background of the presentation. Use the same background on all the slides. The most important thing you have to remember. Just like standardizing the font style and font size, this is also mandatory. You have to remember. You have to use the same background on all these slides. If you choose to decorate your PPTs with different kinds of backgrounds and different types of colors and fonts, etc, etc, it will not become a technical presentation. The purpose of the presentation fails and it becomes a decorative one. That is why you have to avoid those things. So next thing is avoid using colors on fonts to impress the audience. The most irritating thing is using colors on the fonts when you are presenting a presentation. That is in a PPT, you are choosing colors to explain points means that is the most funny idea, because that will also create difficulty in reading, and also people will not be interested in your PPT at all. They will consider that you are an amateur. That is why you have to avoid it. Why we are supposed to use the same background? Because only then it will be uniform. Fine. One more thing you have to remember, which I haven't mentioned in the PPT, is you have to always be ready with two sets of PPTs. One should be suitable for the lighting, that is for the room which has a bright lighting, and the other PPT should be the same content with the background as suitable for the dark room. That is how you can manage to present a effective PPT. Why? Because we doesn't know where you are going to present your paper. You just have an idea. You will never have an exact idea about the venue. Maybe if you are not aware of the venue, what will happen if that is a dark room and you have come up with a dark background means people will not be able to follow your presentation. Henceforth, you are supposed to have two sets of presentation with two various background. That is very important that you have to remember. Next it is the graphs. Graphs, you are supposed to use graphs only if it is necessary for your presentation. Unless until it is necessary for your presentation, you are supposed to avoid using the graphical representation at all. And that is also mandatory. It should be readable. And you have to be cautious in selecting the colors and graphs. As we saw about the fonts, here also obviously graphs and diagrams means used to have colors, right? That should be based on the background of the presentation. If you choose to give colors, you have to always be preferring the white background. That will be most welcome. Next, it is the spelling and grammar. So spelling and grammar plays a vital role in writing itself. So even from your literally from your schooling, you would have come across the spelling, grammar, etc., punctuation, and whatnot. Everything would have come across. Despite all those things, we are still learning the language because English language is just another language we are learning. That is not our mother tongue, right? Hence, we are trying our best. So it is okay to make mistakes, but what is the most important thing is you have to learn from it. So here, when we are speaking about spelling and grammar, what you are supposed to do is always before the presentation, you are supposed to proofread your slides. Proofreading is what? Checking for the mistakes made in the presentation. So mistakes like spelling errors and usages of repeated words. Repeated words means redundant words, and grammatical errors. When you look at the sentence itself, you would easily identify what is the mistake there. But some people will never know how to change it. For that, you can seek the help of the other persons, or maybe your friends, or maybe your guides. That is how you can proofread your presentation. To watch out your grammar, you should always be thorough in basic grammar at least. What is the basic grammar required for writing is sentences and transformation of sentences, of course, and tenses. This is what the basic grammar which is required for writing skill, and I request everyone to be thorough in it. And to make sure that presentation is error free, as I told earlier, you can always seek the help of your friends and maybe your guide. This is how you can make your presentation effective, and these are the few techniques that makes your project a grand success. Only when you are capable of presenting your ideas orally to the people, convincing them that it is your project, it means that you are a successful project writer. Everyone can write a project, but not everyone can explain it effectively. Hence, presentation will be a tool helping you to explain in detail. Then conclusion. After doing all these things, what is the most important criteria you have to remember is concluding the presentation. Use an effective and strong closing. That is, whichever point or whichever context you have chosen all over the presentation, it should be strong and also it should be effective at the end. You have to have your point clear in your mind. Your audience is likely to remember your last words. Of course, whatever you have been talking for past 10 to or 15 minutes, that doesn't count, but the conclusion matters. What you are speaking at the end matters a lot. So a conclusion is very, very important. And use the conclusion slide to summarize the main points of your presentation. That conclusion slide should have a summarized ideas or points which you have been conveying all through your presentation. And the next one is suggest future avenues of research. That is, you can give the scope of what is your idea or maybe what is the project of yours. What are the future additional innovations that could be possibly made in your project? That could be added in your conclusion. That may be an additional point to you. That is, you have, of course, conducted an extensive research that proves that point is being proved with the giving those avenues of research for future researches. Next is the questions. After completing your conclusion and everything is over, every now and then you have to give them time for questions. At the end of your presentation, you have to give the audience time, and you have to invite them to ask you questions. You should be ready with answers to all the possible questions that will be raised there. So obviously it is mandatory you have to prepare an FAQ. FAQ means nothing but frequently asked questions. You should be aware of what are the most frequent questions that could possibly asked by the audience. In that case, you can prepare a set of answers to it and you can be ready with that. And apart from the FAQ, if they are asking you a question, you should be ready to answer to that also. That is how you can make your presentation effective. Provide a visual aid during questioning period. When they are asking you any questions, if you wanted to make that presentation much more livelier, you can provide any visual aid. Okay, it's not mandatory, but still it will make it an interesting part. And the last one is avoid ending a presentation abruptly. That is, without having a good ending or a good conclusion, you are not supposed to end your presentation abruptly. That is suddenly, all of a sudden, you're not supposed to end it. That is the next thing you have to remember. Fine. So that's it with technical presentation techniques, and also the project writing, and what are the writing techniques you have to remember in writing a project, how we are supposed to collect the data, etc., etc. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you.